It is a sad morning for me. I'm sure many of you heard by now that Hugh Hefner passed away last night. The only thing that I sat there and what made me stop bawling my eyes out was that he was surrounded by his family and he died peacefully. I know he lived a life that many of us, especially men, dreamed of having. I was lucky enough to be part of his family. And when I say family, it really truly was that for me. And I think for a lot of girls. A lot of girls from broken homes, not necessarily mine. Mine was actually proudly wonderful. But he would take good care of those girls in such a sentimental way, which is why every girl, pretty much, if they're interviewed about his passing, will say probably the exact same things as me, which is he was the most good-hearted, caring, generous, supportive friend, mentor, and his zest for life was contagious. When I heard the news, and of course David was my bad news deliverer last night, I sat there for a moment and didn't think I was going to burst into tears, but I literally burst into tears, and I want to do it right now. You might have to save me. And it all comes from, there's always those people in your life that change the course of your life. And how many people he affected just through me alone, not talking about all the other thousands of people he's affected, for just me alone, giving me the opportunity to move my parents out of a bad neighborhood into a good neighborhood, pay off their debts, pay off my college loan, move to Los Angeles so I can pursue my dream. And he was always supportive, always proud. Whenever I would see him, he would hug me and say, "You're doing such a good job." And I think one of the things that I really felt was I really hope he did. I hope I did make him proud. To me, Playboy wasn't anything but one of the, and it might be weird for her to hear people say this, but one of the classiest organizations I had ever worked with. Truly. The respect, the caring, the support. I remember moving out to Los Angeles and not knowing anybody, but because I had Playboy, believe it or not, it was like a sorority house meets the best grandpa ever. Hef never once hit on me when I lived at the mansion. It was during the time that Hef was married, so I got to see the dad part of Hef. My first day there, one of his sons threw bacon at my face during breakfast, and I realized, wow, this is just like any other normal family. There were kids' toys everywhere. There was no parties. There was no crazy orgies. It was a legitimate family home. And I was grateful because coming from Chicago, we're kind of, I don't want to say, I guess, I don't want to say we have high morals, but we come from kind of good, families, tight-knit families. And it was nice to see that. I know my family was terrified that I was going to California, and especially their perception of being connected to Playboy was probably a lot like everybody else's. But it was the thing that made me who I am today. It gave me on-camera experience. So by the time I auditioned for MTV, I was able to get that job. And through the numerous covers I did after that, or the specials that I would host with Hef, I'll never forget. And the great thing was, he would always say, thanks for sharing the dream, Jen, which he liked to say a lot. And when I thought about him passing last night, I hate getting emotional. But I just thought I wanted one more, one more chance to just say thanks. thanks and thank you for sharing your dream with me and for giving so many girls and so many people an opportunity of a lifetime. So I will always miss you, Hef, and you will never be forgotten. Sorry. I want to go into a little bit of stuff that won't make me cry, but my kind of journey into Playboy, which I think is a fun and interesting story. When I was living in Chicago, I was working at a Polish grocery store, and we sold Playboy magazines, and I would always stare at the cover and think, well, I can do that. These girls come from all over the country, and they don't have any modeling experience. And the cover that I was selling was Anna Nicole Smith. And I thought, wow, she's not a size 0. And I was a thicker girl compared to what you would consider an LA girl. I thought maybe someday. And I remember growing up on the beach in Chicago and looking up at the skyline where Playboy was born in Chicago. It had the big Playboy sign right on the skyline. And I'd look up at that and think, oh, I wonder if one day I can do that. And working at the Polish grocery store, I thought, you know what, I've got nothing to lose. So I sent my pictures out to a bunch of modeling agencies, and they all rejected me except for one. And she called me into the office, and she proceeded to tell me that I would never model, and I should just give it up right now and go serve beer in a bar because I look like a bartender. I mean, I couldn't really argue with that. I kind of did look like a bartender. But my dreams were much bigger than that. And I went outside, cried on the curb, and I looked across the street, and it was the Playboy building. So all those memories of working at the Polish grocery store, looking up at that, skyline in the summertime, thought, you know what do I got to lose besides my mother disowning me? So I walked across the street, and I went up the elevator, and I walked up to the front desk, and I said, hi, I don't know how to do this, and I don't even know if I want to do it. I just want to know what to do. And she said, well, certainly you don't walk in here. You have to send some pictures in, and we get approximately 1 million photos a year from girls. So take some photos and mail them to this address. I said, okay. So I was going to the elevator and waiting for it, and a gentleman walked past, and he kind of did a double take because I was dressed as, what I considered schoolgirl sexy. And he said, excuse me, are you here to attempt to be a playmate? I said, thinking in my head, this is my opportunity to run right now, or say yes and maybe change my life. So I said yes, and he said, well, you know what? We have a photo shoot going on in the back. Why don't you come on back there and give it a try? And all I can think was, oh my God, I did not shave. I didn't expect this. What am I going to do? I am terrified. And so I went back there, and fortunately, they just let me put on a bikini, even though there were still sprouts growing from every direction. And I went out and basically took a few photos, and I know I look like a mugshot. I literally stood center, did a profile, and left. And I got on the city bus, drove an hour back to home, and by the time I got home, the answering machine, yes, an answering machine, said, hey there, this is Playboy. We want to let you know that Hef looked at your photos, and he wants to consider you for Miss October. And I freaked out and didn't tell my parents because I was terrified, and wound up posing for my centerfold. And I almost lost this opportunity completely. On the last day of shooting my centerfold, which takes 5 days, I had the photographer and the manager came up to me and said, okay, Hef said tomorrow's your last chance to try to get this right. I said, what am I doing wrong? And they said, every photo, you look terrified. You have a terrified look on your face. And I thought I was trying to look sexy, but apparently I look like I just witnessed a car accident in every photo. So she said, go home and practice looking sexy in the mirror. So I literally went home that night and did as many like expressions as I possibly could, and went back the next day and did my best. I think Hef pushed me through because I was a Chicago girl. I was, where his dream was realized. And I think his whole goal of having a girl next door was real. It was authentic. He could tell I didn't come from a strip club. I was truly the girl that worked at the Polish grocery store. So I got the approval, and I found out I was officially Miss October, and that's when I packed up my U-Haul and I moved out to Los Angeles. And I remember driving on the 10 freeway, pulling up to Playboy, going up on their roof and looking up at the mountains and saying, I'm going to make it. I'm going to do everything I can to make it. And here I am today. And it's all because of this opportunity that Hef gave me. So every tear that I cry, I think, is really out of gratitude. And I hope people reflect on what he's done to be a revolutionary. I mean, in terms of the sexual revolution, creating a path, taking us on a journey of showing us that, dreams can come true. And mine certainly has. So thank you, Hef, and I love you. And on that note, I want to go to commercial break so I can cry. We'll be right back.